Scandinavian children go to school alone at the age of 6, clean their classrooms without anyone saying a word, and grow up to be some of the most self-disciplined adults in the world. And behind it all is Scandinavian parenting. Tiny children walk to school, they go alone, without their parents. They don't have phones or GPS trackers, just a child alone, with their backpack, walking between home and school. You might say, that's irresponsible, that's dangerous, but the interesting thing is, that child will grow up to be one of the most self-sufficient adults in the world. And the country where this happens, it consistently ranks as one of the happiest places in the world. It's no coincidence. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why. Today, we'll be talking about another aspect of Scandinavian parenting, specifically how Danish, Norwegian, and Swedish families raise children who clean their rooms, study, and fulfill their responsibilities without needing to be told. But before I give you the 5 habits, I need to mention something that most parenting content completely misunderstands. Honestly, I misunderstood it too when I first researched it. The secret isn't in what Scandinavian parents do, but in what they refuse to do. Listen carefully, because you'll want to pause the video at the 3rd habit. We've talked about friluftsliv before, but today we'll look at a completely different aspect of it. Parents think that letting their child stay outside in the cold is solely for health, but that's not true. The real point is this: by staying outside in bad weather and managing the discomfort at that moment, the child sends a signal to their brain. I'm struggling right now, but I'm in control. This is that first discipline muscle that enables your child to take responsibility later in life. So my question is, when was the last time you gave your child the opportunity to manage their own discomfort without immediately intervening? Let's look at the scientific side of things. A 2021 study showed that children who spend a lot of time outdoors, even in uncomfortable weather, score significantly higher in 3 specific areas: self-regulation, risk assessment, and resilience to frustration. In other words, the ability to remain calm and move on when something is difficult or uncomfortable. Researchers have shown that regular exposure to cold, mud, and rain improves this capacity. So, we need to take our children outside in appropriate clothing, regardless of rain or mud. This isn't just about health, it's also about child development. I've talked about hygge quite a bit before. Please check out my previous videos if you haven't already. Hygge is a daily, indispensable habit that Danish families have maintained for generations. No phones or planned activities, just people. And they're all in the same room. There's a specific neurological reason why this creates more self-disciplined children. Are you curious? Hygge teaches children to be bored together. No screens, nothing. Children have nothing to do and are expected to sit there in discomfort and eventually find their own way. Researchers call this unstructured social time. And studies consistently show it produces 2 things: stronger intrinsic motivation and higher creativity. Because when you can't reach for a screen, the brain starts generating its own entertainment. It starts solving problems you didn't know existed. This intrinsic motor that hygge quietly builds is the exact same motor that makes a child clean their room without being told. Not because they're told. They do it because they've learned to direct themselves. Now, we come to the habit I warned you about. In Denmark, even 6-year-old children walk to school alone, not in a small town, but in cities, alone. Even in traffic, no parents following them, no tracking apps, just a child exploring the world alone. And when most Western parents first hear this, they think, this is quite dangerous. What an irresponsible mother. But according to child development experts, what's truly irresponsible is raising a child who has never been trusted to do anything difficult on their own, because that child will become an adult who doesn't know what to do with themselves in the future. Stanford psychologist Albert Bandura spent years researching what truly predicts lifelong success. The most powerful predictor was what he called self-efficacy, a deep belief that your actions have consequences, a belief that you can do difficult things. And what fosters self-efficacy is actually experiences of mastery, small victories, and real challenges overcome and successfully completed on your own. The Go Self, or do-it-yourself tradition, is at its core a daily self-efficacy machine, Every child who walks to school alone and arrives confidently tells their developing brain, I did this. Whatever comes next, I can do too. This message accumulates over the years. It evolves into a type of adult who doesn't wait to be told what to do. The fourth habit has a name that immediately unsettles Western parents, Børns Demokrati, children's democracy, and I already know what you're thinking. So children can do whatever they want? No, absolutely not. Democratic parenting is not permissive parenting. The child doesn't set the rules, but the child is constantly and reliably listened to. Danish parents ask their 5-year-old what they think should happen, not because the child's answer determines the outcome, but because the question itself sends a message that shapes identity. Your perspective matters. Your voice carries weight in this family. And this message, repeated every day for 18 years, creates something that no reward chart could ever create. Psychologists call this an internal locus of control. It's a belief ingrained deep within the neural architecture that your choices produce consequences, that you are in control. Children who develop a strong internal locus of control are more persistent, more self-motivated, better at regulating their emotions, and far less dependent on external approval. Here's the concrete difference. A child with a low internal locus of control waits to be told what to do and acts to avoid consequences. A child with a high internal locus of control decides for themselves what to do, because they were treated as someone whose decisions mattered from the beginning. One of these children will need a manager to function, the other will not. The fifth habit, the one that makes the least sense until suddenly it all makes sense, it's called Janteloven, Jante's law, and at its core it says something that sounds almost insulting to modern success culture. You're no more important than the collective. You don't need to be the best. You don't need to stand out. Your value isn't determined by what you accomplish. And I know exactly what you're thinking. This sounds like a recipe for raising unmotivated, mediocre children. I thought the same thing, and the research, it completely shattered that assumption. When a child grows up in an environment where their value isn't tied to performance, they fear failure less. And children who aren't afraid of failure strive harder, take more creative risks, and persevere longer when things get tough. They don't work to beat someone else. They work because the work itself is meaningful. A Stanford University study found that Scandinavian children have significantly lower performance anxiety and significantly higher intrinsic motivation. Not lower ambition, but higher intrinsic motivation. The Janteloven paradox. When your value isn't at stake with every attempt, you try more freely, more often, and more fully. You stop performing, you begin to be. Let's look back and see what these 5 habits actually have in common. Friluftsliv, living outdoors. Hygge, comfort and well-being. Selv, self-reliance. Børns, a democratic approach. Janteloven, love of social circles. On the surface, they look completely different, but underneath, there's a single idea. Each habit eliminates something. Friluftsliv eliminates the need for shelter. Hygge eliminates the need for entertainment. Selv, self-reliance, eliminates the need for companionship. Børns Democracy eliminates top-down authority. Janteloven eliminates performance pressure. Scandinavian parenting isn't about adding more things to a child's life. It's about systematically removing the scaffolding and watching the child build their own architecture. Now, a voice inside some of you is saying, it just sounds like parents doing less. It's laziness disguised as philosophy. I understand you. Yes, Scandinavian parenting isn't easy. Scandinavian parenting requires self-direction. It requires watching your child struggle and not interfering. It requires sitting with the discomfort of flawed outcomes. It requires trusting in something that modern parenting culture has deemed unsafe, your child's own developing ability. It requires more discipline from the parent than any reward system. Let's look at the results. Denmark has been among the top 3 happiest countries for 30 years in a row. Danish children report some of the highest well-being scores globally. Norway and Finland consistently top international education rankings. Not because children study more hours, but because they have greater intrinsic motivation. Sweden has some of the lowest rates of childhood anxiety in the developed world. And in global surveys measuring adult self-sufficiency, the Nordic countries perform better than any other region in the world. What you build in the first 90 days doesn't stay in the first 90 days. Secure attachment and strong early emotional regulation manifest years later in academic performance, friendships, resilience, and mental health in adulthood. Research shows that children who grow up in consistently high hygge environments have significantly lower anxiety rates, stronger conflict resolution skills, and higher life satisfaction. A stroller outside in the cold, a quiet hour on the couch, an evening walk. These are never small investments. They will pay off in a lifetime. Now, what are you going to do? I'm going to ask you to do something for tomorrow morning. Don't help your child pack their school bag. Just watch. Let them go to school with the wrong pen. Let them face the small, low-risk consequence of having to borrow. This small moment is when your child's brain begins to build its self-regulating circuits. Let's talk about the trust gap, which is the distance between what you believe your child is capable of and what they are actually capable of. We widen this gap with every correction we make, often without the child even wanting it. Scandinavian parenting helps close this gap. There's one more thing I haven't mentioned yet, and perhaps the most important of all. There's an expression in Scandinavian culture, being seen. When a Danish child falls and cries, they don't respond with the typical parental reaction of, "You're okay," or "Stop crying." Sometimes it's just a pause, and sometimes just 3 words. "You really hurt yourself." Nothing else. Your feelings are real, and not a problem to be managed. You have the right to have them. Children who grow up with this kind of emotional acknowledgement become adults who don't run away from discomfort. This is the deepest root of resilience. Scandinavian children don't need to be told to clean up. That's because they were raised by parents who were ready to step aside. If this video made you see childhood differently, share it with a parent who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you don't miss my next videos.